Hi guys, how you doing? We'll just give it a few minutes, let a few more join us, and then we'll get stuck in. Got a few things to show you guys. Let's see if we can get that light a bit better because it looks a bit dark because of the brightness over there. We can turn it around a bit. Maybe. Yeah, it'd probably be better. Might be a bit better there. So can everyone hear me okay? So I'm new to this setting up live, and I should have, if I weren't a little bit more busier today, spent a bit more time. I tried to set us all up on the other laptop there. I've got the Surface Pro because it's got a bit better camera, but I think we'll cope with what we've got here. I don't know whether you guys, just while we wait a little bit longer, want to grab a cup of tea or something, and then we can get into some of the stuff that I'd like to show you and talk a little bit more about the magnetic pole reversal that our Earth's currently going through, and show you guys some of the equipment that we've got that monitors the magnetic poles, and talk about that, as well as some of the other electronic components that I've built and some of the projects that I've got on the go at the moment with other electronics. So go and grab yourselves a cup of tea. I'm a little bit late into the live stream, but I'm sure I'll get a bit more used to doing this. This is the second live stream I've done. So with a bit of luck, the more I do, the better I'll get. Okay. I was planning on doing one this weekend, and I got someone that was prepared to do the moderating for me in the comment section, just to bring to my attention some of the questions that I've got going, because I've got a small screen down there with your questions. Hi Ian, hi A22, Naz, Maria, hi. John Baxter, how you doing? So we'll just give it a few more minutes and then we'll get stuck in anyhow, and people can just catch up, where we are. So I have got in maintenance one of the Triax out, the Trimax system. Would you guys like to see that? So I'll just go and grab it. I'll be 2 seconds. So part of the Trimax system consists of 3 of these tracks. It's on a wooden board because obviously we want to cut down any metallic interference. What we've got is a simple Arduino Uno NFR24 transmitter and receiver, and then on the end there we've got a Honeywell magnetometer which measures 3 axes on there. And this is one of the tracks which I'm just servicing at the moment out of the 3, and it's still, even with 2 of the Triax at the moment in running order, is enough to give us a good accurate prediction. If you think about it, in total there are 3 of these magnetometers, each measuring 3 axes, so that's 9 axes being measured every 3 seconds. And one of these boards will transmit to the master, which is in the end room, every 3 seconds, a new heading and a data package, which is recorded onto the SD card. And then we take the SD card out, and it can be as much as 200, 300,000 readings a month. We'll put that in Excel, and then we'll do a chart with it. Now, one of the things that people have said is that the chart looks a bit blurry. Well, as you can imagine, if there is like 300,000 separate pieces of information, it's going to be blurry. It's going to look like there is just a straight line. That's because there is so many data packages that, and sometimes, you know, it takes a while for it to render the chart. But if you go onto the website and have a look, what you'll see is a 0 on the left bottom of the scale to, you know, whatever, it might be 120,000 or 200,000 or 300,000 separate individual data packets that it's collected over the entire 30-day average period. And then we put that into Excel, do a chart on it, and then using the mathematics that is run through the Arduinos, we're able to pinpoint the position of the magnetic North Pole. And we are probably the only observatory that is publicly serving people with that information. I don't know why any of the other larger organisations won't share their information, but as you guys know, if you've been looking for yourself for the positioning of the magnetic North Pole, companies like NOAA stopped doing it, and the ESA, and I believe NASA, all around about the same time for some reason. 2015 was the last time, as far as I'm aware, and it was then forecast based on the current speed and migration pattern for the next few years afterwards. But that was a forecast and not an accurate positioning. I know that I forget the guy's name. I used to talk about him a lot. He used to, until it became too far away and there wasn't very many places for him to land over the Arctic Circle. He used to go out in his Twin Otter plane and land where he could, and then do positioning of the magnetic North Pole. But the pole has migrated now, I think, too far for his twin engine Otter to fly over there, land and get back. So he no longer, as far as I'm aware, no longer does that. We can do, but what I was hoping to do, John, is set up my other laptop. Then I could have just turned it round, because I'm not that competent in using OBS, which is a screen capture software where you can bring in screens off other things. So what I could do one of the days is bring the Mavstar in here. I can plug that into the Arduino software, and then we can have a look. As it's collecting data, you'll see all the data sets, and it does it every 3 seconds. So it also numbers which took the reading. So, you know, what we're looking for is the 3 tracks to be reading very accurately the same, so that we know all tracks are not falling out of sync with each other, or more so the position of the magnetic pole. And we know which magnetometer took the reading, because sometimes the problem is with the Arduino is it doesn't have a lot of memory, and that was why it was so hard for me to get this to work. I had to make the program so streamlined, and I even had someone from Langley, believe it or not, that works with an agency of the government in America, who programs a lot of their screens in there. You know, it looks like a small private jet, just a bit bigger than a private jet, but it's used to actually observe islands like the Spratlys and what's going on in that region. And the guy that was working at that base was the son of a friend of mine, Brad, who I mentioned. You guys probably don't remember Brad. Ex-special, he was a Navy SEAL, had a lot to do with the base on Langley, and of course his son was one of the guys that programmed those special aircraft. He helped me, and we spent a few nights trying to knock out the bugs, because what we got is it reading all the data, It was transmitting fine, but it just wouldn't write it onto the SD card, which is what we needed it to do, to collect all the data so that we could put it into Excel and then process all that information. And it took a long time. In the end, he said to me, Gene, I don't know what else to suggest now, because I was sending him my program. He was looking at it. He was changing a few things, and then he was sending it me back. And we spent nights doing this. And he said, well, I don't really know what now to do, because it should be working. And my guess is that we was at the very limits of what that Arduino could do. And there are now more better Arduinos with more power. I think it's a Tinsy 3 point something. You can obviously request more of its ability to do more work, but these are very limited. And I guess that's what the problem was. But I didn't give up, even though I mean, you can imagine. I thought, if this guy at Langley, that is a very experienced programmer, can't knock the bugs out of this, then we're done. But I didn't give up. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I don't know what I'd done. I changed a few of the bits of the program, the way it was collecting the data, and lo and behold, it started recording it onto the SD card. So that was the biggest breakthrough for us. And then all of a sudden, the Triax system was born, and it was a process of 2 years work. But it was a good learning curve for me, because learning to program that Arduino, which was quite as one of my first projects, really, I took on quite a lot. I took on not only the transmitting from one to another wirelessly, and I'll tell you why I wanted it wirelessly. It weren't that I was trying to be flash or ask too much. It was because I was told that if I did it by hardline or a wire from the Triax to the master, you might lose data in between the line because it's so long. I think it's good up to about 1 meter or 2, but anything longer than 1 meter or 2, you've got the possibility of losing data through the transfer of the line. So I thought, well, it's got to be wireless for that, and that's why we use the NFR 24 transmitter and receiver that there. So there's one of these on each of the tracks, each of the 3 tracks, and then which is situated in the loft, and then in the office down the bottom of the hallway there's another one of these with an Arduino, and then underneath it's got the board with the the SD card in it. So that's our Triax system, and I don't know why nobody else has put the effort into make one. People have asked me for the program. I guess they could make it. I could do a pinout for them, but I won't give the program away. It's like, it'd be like giving 2 years worth of work away, and I certainly wouldn't do that. I'm just going to have a quick look in the comment section. Hi Maz, hi Andrew. Let's have a look. Yeah, the Langley guy. Yeah, I've mentioned him a couple of times. I try not to mention his name, obviously, for reasons. I don't want to get him in trouble. But how many? There's 26 at the moment. I'm hoping for a few more to come and join us later on. Hi, Crypto Rick. How you doing? Do I think that a current AI program can write the Triax? The problem is, it probably could. I have put the AI to task on that, programming just a simple, give me the pinout for the Arduino to light an LED up, and then every 5 seconds repeat, and it writ the program. But the problem is with the Triax is you would have to have a lot of patience, and I guess it would require a very detailed, specific ask of the AI, because you know what AI is like. If you're not specific, it'll just miss a complete chunk out. So you'd have to say, we're using what board Arduino, we're using what magnetometer, and we're using an NFR 24 transceiver, We want it to transmit over a distance within the range of the capabilities of the NFR24, and we want it to communicate with another Arduino where the data gets sent past and then is recorded onto an SD card. I've never tasked the AI to do that, to see if it could, but I would probably guess you're going to be pulling your hair out because it's going to be missing chunks out. But you're welcome to try. You've seen the board, 3 main components on the board: the magnetometer, the Arduino board, and then the NFR24 on the track end, on the tri end, or the transmitter end. And then on the receiver end, you would have an NFR24 Arduino and an SD card reader. But, by all means, if you want to give it a go, I would doubt the success that only because the specifics that it would be required. You would have to really, really go into depth and detail of what you want it to do as a specific task with the transmitter, and then the same for the receiver. But I do believe we're going to arrive at a point in time where AI will be writing all the programs. There's another job going along with all the others. So I look a bit red on the camera. That's because I spent most of the afternoon out in a forecourt. I've started my driver training on HGV today. I had a really good day. I was really nervous. I've got, if you don't want me just briefly telling you about what happened today. So I arrive at the yard where I'm going to be learning to drive heavy goods vehicles, class 1. And I know that some of the learning schools have small articulated trailers. Well, this one didn't. It had the full-size articulated trailer, and I was surprised, but I can understand that it was also laden with about 34 tons as well. So, I'm standing next to this truck, which I've driven, rigid bodied trucks, but not 17-ton ones, only up to 7.5 ton, but large ones that wasn't meant to carry heavy weight, but large objects. So I'm standing there with my heart in my mouth thinking, oh my God, look at how big this truck is when you get actually close up to it. It's quite frightening. But, the instructor was quite good. He made me feel comfortable. He told me to jump straight in, and back it up and do this. And we've done our walk range checks and stuff like that. And, it suddenly started to shrink in size. I know that sounds crazy, but it did get smaller the more I was using it. So today we've done our walk round checks. We've dropped the trailer off. We've connected the trailer back up. But I know it sounds like these things happen really quickly, but there are specific tasks that you have to do. If you're a HGV driver, you know exactly what I'm talking about with the acronym BLACK. So you've got your brakes, your legs, airlines, clip, and etc. And your pin. And then, you got to put all your airlines away. Then reconnecting it is the opposite to doing all that. But I won't bore you with that, guys. I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow, because we're going to be going out on the road. I think we've got to drive up to Loughborough. And, that'll be a completely new experience for me. But the instructors said, with the way you backed it into the bay twice without having to shunt it in there at all, he said, you'll pass no problem. He said, if you'd have done that on the day of your test, you'll pass straight away. So I'm looking forward to it. There is an update on the pole shift, and I think I did also put the latitude and longitude up on the website under Earth Alpha at a glance. I've updated that. So yeah, there's the latest update. Or if you want to see the actual chart, you can go over to Patreon and have a look. Unfortunately, it's going to cost you, a £5 to do that. And that's one of the reasons why, we've lost, and I know what it is, it's cost of living crisis. And like I've been talking in recent videos, I'm not surprised, that I thought that, the money that we raised for the observatory was solid, because I never expected the economy to shrink as much as it has internationally. And I thought, well, if we're going to run into trouble, it'll be just one or two countries. But, as it happens, as you guys know, this is an international problem or crisis. Let's call it what it is. And people, excuse me, people are struggling internationally. So, it has not just damaged, the support that we get. A lot of YouTubers won't admit it, but it's damaged their livelihoods as well, and their support for their projects as well. So, this isn't just affecting me, it's affecting everyone on YouTube. On top of that, we've got YouTube censoring more than they ever have done now. And they seem to be censoring and targeting people that are talking about subjects that are not commonly spoken and talked about on mainstream news. So it's like, if you're not following off the hymn sheet of the mainstream news, talking about what they're talking about, and you're talking about things that, the governments around the world, I'm not being paranoid or anything, but if you're talking about things that the governments don't want talked about, then you're going to be put on this list for special treatment by YouTube and other social media platforms. And they've got these social media platforms by the short and curlies, really. They don't really have a choice, because they've been threatened by at least the British government that if you don't comply, you don't get these things under check, then the next thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be submitting an application for a license to broadcast YouTube in the UK. And a lot of you guys won't know about that, but this was something that I spoke to an MP about. And at the moment, I don't believe that there is, or an admitted charter between the government and YouTube. But I will just say this. In the case of, what's his name? Russell Brand, one of the ministers of the UK threatened YouTube that they had to demonetize him. And they did. Now, that really does go against, the European Human Rights Act, in that a government is not supposed to intervene in people talking about whatever subject they want to and whoever they want to. But then when they weren't happy that, they'd silenced him, because all Russell Brand did was move over to Rumble, and he took quite a large following with him, and he's doing very successful over on Rumble. But because he was still, maintaining a large audience and talking about the topics even more freely, they then come up with, these sexual allegations. And they seem to do this a lot, don't they? If they can't control you one way, then next thing they do is hit you with sexual allegations. It's their tools and their toolkit that they bring out, which is sad, because I'm a big supporter of freedom of speech, because I know that at the heart and center of a democracy is freedom of speech. And when we lose that, then you might as well forget the idea of democracy. And I know a lot of you guys would probably already say that democracy's disappeared, and that these politicians like to talk and speak the word democracy, but they don't act it, or they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, which is very sad, because I see it leaning towards a very fascist state. I don't know if you agree with that, but something that mirrors the behaviour of the 1930s, with the Nazis burning their literature, literally burning books of information that they deemed wasn't suitable for the general public. So the freedom of being able to read what you wanted, talk to people about whatever topic you wanted to back then, was frowned upon. And what did they do? They burnt the literature. The Nazis burned all the books that they didn't agree with. And shortly after, there was the death factories opening up in Auschwitz, Poland. And we're not there yet, but we certainly are in an era where they are burning accounts on YouTube digitally. So it may not be books that they're burning, but they're definitely burning accounts and the ability for people to freely speak about whatever they want. I think it's more with what's happened on my channel, and you can clearly see there's been throttling back. And you're going to hear a lot more of your subscribers on YouTube talking about the throttling back, and it really is happening. And I believe it's because we're talking not just about, like in my case, not just about magnetic pole reversal, but we're talking about other controversial subjects related to policies and politics and economy and all the other things. And they don't like it. It's like they see that we shouldn't be talking about these things, that they're the experts. But let's remember these experts, when it came down to the 1,000 scientists that were working on CO2, and they'd come to the conclusion that it was absolutely CO2, but more so man-made CO2 that caused, the global warming to increase. It was those 1,000 scientists that come together and said, we don't need to have the debate anymore. It's been decided. But when we look through the list of the names on that list of those 1,000 scientists, it shouldn't come as any surprise that one of the names, believe it or not, was Mickey Mouse. So that's their so-called scientists, their 1,000 scientists that come to the conclusion, which is shocking. But then, I don't know how freely I can talk on this live chat with you guys, but we will one day go on to another platform where I know we can talk a little bit more freely, because I was absolutely on the money with something during the lockdown, and it was to do something that was created that said it would help us all. I'm going to try very carefully not to mention it, but I was on the ball, and I was also qualified to talk about that. At university, my qualification did lend also to biology, physics, chemistry, maths, astronomy, lots of things. So, they couldn't say that I wasn't qualified to talk about what I was talking about. And, I've got to be careful, like I say, because I would like to continue doing these live podcasts once a week with you guys. I'd like to keep my YouTube channel. I just find it really frustrating that, it's been censored so much. It's destroying the very essence of YouTube, which was a shame, because it is a great platform. I think you will all agree. If you want to find something out very quickly, you can go onto YouTube, type in the topic, and you'll get it. Or if you want specific news on specifics, you can find it as well. SO2, sulfur dioxide, yeah, I agree, John, is a bigger problem, and that obviously is emitted by active volcanoes. Yeah. Really, man-made CO2 is negligible. It's less than 0.5%. And what they're saying is, imagine it, 99.5% of naturally occurring CO2 comes from the degassing of oceans naturally and land. But what they're saying is that this little bit that man puts into the atmosphere, this tiny smidgen of CO2 that man puts into the atmosphere, is the bit that sent it over the top, and therefore we've got we've got global warming, we've got sea levels rising. It's crazy. First of all, they want to start measuring sea levels at the correct place on the Earth, and that's something that they're not doing. It would be better, as I know a scientist that used to do it and give up because of his frustration. The best place to measure sea levels is at the equator, and that's where we get the super bulge. Because if you're measuring them anywhere else, then you're obviously going to lead to errors in your measurements. And the other thing, like I mentioned in the last live upload we did, was they haven't even taken into consideration these islands that seem to be having the sea levels rise. What about if they was on a tectonic plate that was on a subduction zone, so that plate is being dragged underneath the next plate? And of course, watch my hand, it's getting lower and lower. And if your island's there, look what's happening. Yes, it's going to take it under. It's going to make it look like the sea is rising, but in actual fact, it's the plate that the island's on is sinking under the other tectonic plate. But they don't even mention that fact because, of course, sea levels rising fits in with climate change, CO2, and man-made climate. And of course, it's great for them. They get to raise is it 1 trillion now every year they want to raise, the United Nations? So it's just putting money in their friends and their pockets, as far as I'm concerned, because they're not doing proper science. Where they're measuring the temperature from is crazy. And Tony Heller on YouTube does a much better job at talking about these things and showing you guys where these things are being manufactured. So I'm just reading Total Properties comment. Yeah, I agree. It will be issue after issue, but there'll always be an issue, and then following the issue, it will be we need to raise taxes for this. But I think we're already taxed to the hilt internationally. The cost of living crisis is in every country. Nobody can afford any more taxes. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The best we can do is prepare as best we can. Yeah, and at least we know we've done everything possible. Well, yeah, I agree, John. What you're talking about is thermal expansion. And if you've got guttering on your outside of your house, have you ever heard it creaking in hot weather? And then when it cools down, if a cloud comes over the sun, you'll automatically hear it creaking again. Well, your guttering's designed to do that. And over a 10-meter length of guttering that catches the rain on the edge of your roof, it will contract by at least a centimetre over 10 metres. And of course, that's plastic, but we get thermal expansion and contraction with any materials. The hotter they get, the more they expand, because what's happening is the gaps in between all the molecules are coming further away from each other. And if you looked at a video of or an animation of liquid turning to gas, what's happening is the molecules in the liquid form, when they're frozen, they're very tight together. When they're in liquid form, they're slowly moving away from each other. And when they're in the gas, they're able to move even further away. So, yeah, thermal expansion, that's it explained. Yeah, Paul, agree. Yeah, window manufacturers have to put, I think it's calcium dioxide in with the plastic to stop the UV destroying the plastic so that it lasts longer, your UPVC windows. I think the only way, and there are people doing it, and it's unfortunate that not all of us are able to do it, but I think the only way to avoid the nonsense in our society these days is get yourself a homestead if you can afford to, and get out of the main cities, because we have literally lunatics leading us now. Absolutely lunatics. And I'm not going to mention any names or from what countries. Look, we have a load of lunatics in positions that they should never have got in the first place, yet we have them. And I think the best thing to do, especially with the the economic crisis that we're all in, the cost of living crisis, would be to have an acre of land or 2 acres of land, somewhere where you could make your own solar farm, you could grow your own food. And I know you're never going to avoid complete hassle off the government with tax, because the next thing they're going to come is home tax in America or council tax like we have here in the UK. So they're always going to find a way to get money off us, but at least we could reduce our outgoings, like on food and energy production, and the environmental conditions in the open countryside would be a lot cleaner. The air would be cleaner. You would be managing most likely your own water, so you'd be filtering that to whatever required parts per million of filtration you wanted. I mean, I've and some of you guys have probably already got your own filtration systems attached to your taps anyhow. I mean, mine comes out less than one part per million, so it's really clear. But I've got 6-stage filter on my water. But more and more people are doing it because, I mean, here in the UK, one of the water companies has just declared bankruptcy, and I think they're asking for government support to step in. And that's because they've not been reinvesting in the infrastructure that they've got. They've just been paying, believe it or not, their shareholders 10% every year and completely neglecting the system in place. Now, what's happened is, the quality of water is absolutely abysmal. The company's gone bankrupt and the government are having to pick up the pieces. That's wrong in every aspect of that. It's wrong. Company CEOs, in my view, should face prison time for that, because that is a great neglect of public trust. But this is what we're dealing with on a massive scale now. It seems like wherever you go, there's a con. You have to be twice as shrewd as the fox. You have to be aware every time that there could be someone there just saying things just to take your money, just to take you for a ride, this, that, and the other. And here's the thing: YouTube advertisement. Well, I would not personally buy anything else off of an advertisement off YouTube, because I did it before and I got ripped off good and proper. And that showed me that YouTube are not regulating the advertisers. So it's a field day for the advertisers on YouTube. One of the classic examples, I mean, I'll just tell you, I ordered a globe that when you rolled it across the floor, the actual globe never moved. It looked like the globe was floating across the floor. You know what they sent me? A paper globe that didn't do anything like what it showed in the advert. I just sent them an email. I said, you know exactly what you've done. This wasn't what was described, but there's a lot on YouTube like that, like the laser welders. Now, a real laser welder would cost you between £10,000–15,000, but the ones that they're selling for £40 on YouTube don't work. They're not even going to be fit for soldering, I'll be honest with you. But I've already seen some reviews on these. So. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing next year, John. I've only got literally a postage stamp back garden. But next year, I was talking to me and my sister, and I said, well, because my sister's got a huge back garden, I said, you should make use of that garden. You should plant some of your food. I says, even if it's just salads and things like that, it saves a few quid in your groceries. I says, and it's an interesting little hobby. I says, why don't we next year, when we get into March, prepare the gardens? Because mine's small, I'm going to have to grow upright, not on so much on a hydroponic scale, but, it's got to be like probably 50-gallon drums, and I'll just see how I get on. At the place I used to live, there was plenty of places to grow, and I did have 9 separate little growing plots for different individuals. Like I grew my own onions, runner beans, potatoes, carrots. I had all the herbs, because I use a lot of herbs in my cooking anyhow. I like fresh coriander, parsley, marjoram, things like that. So I grew a lot of them. And we also had some chickens as well. But you can't keep a nice flower garden with chickens. They just pick everything to bits. But, we're going to have a go next year, John. Having a go at growing again, see what we can get growing. Because, like I say, it's a very small garden I've got, but I'm going to try and grow up. The other thing I want to do is look into not something self-sustaining with solar panels, but something that at least would, in an emergency, run the computers that keep a fridge going and stuff like that. even if in the daytime it only powered enough to run the fridges and charge the laptops and the phones and that, but on the night time, it cut off. At least you've got a chance of your food staying more fresher with it charging up your freezer in the daytime and going out on the night than it going out completely. So, I'm not going to try and become self-sufficient completely off grid with the electric, but I'm going to make a little bit more of an effort next year to do that. So I knew we would get one in the group, and we'll leave them just to chat rubbish. Obviously, what Truth's saying, bro, your life 3 years for money. Obviously, he's insane, completely insane, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I guarantee you, next time we do a live podcast, there will be a moderator, and we'll have him chucked out. See if we can chuck him. No, just leave him, ignore him. So, talked about the Trimag. Let's talk about the muon detectors. So there was a guy, Alexei, I think, from MIT in America, that him and his students designed this PCB board, which we had manufactured. And we had about 30 of these, 40 of these manufactured. That's them there. That's the stack of them we've still got. And he shows you how to put all these together. I wasn't ever trying to say that I'd built this and designed it, because, if that was the case, I would have changed the silk screen and rubbed off, Cosmic Watch, which was the name of the project that they did at MIT. But I was just grateful to Alexei for doing this, because without that, we wouldn't be able to manufacture our own muon detectors. And of course, we're detecting muons that are broken particles in the upper atmosphere. So what happens is we get cosmic rays coming in, and if we get a weakened magnetosphere, we'll have more cosmic rays come in, and they will collide with our upper atmospheric particles like oxygen, hydrogen, helium, xenon, krypton, and all those other gases, and they'll break those particles into subatomic particles, and we'll end up with eventually muons on the surface level. So if we want to know whether or not our magnetosphere is weakening and allowing more radiation in, we can use the muon detectors as an indicator that we're getting more subatomic particles on ground level. And this is one of those. So it consists of a singulate, which is this. It looks like a piece of plastic. It's actually tuned crystal, that is, to a certain wavelength. Now, we can't see it with our naked eye, but right now, all around us, there are muons spinning around, and we can't even, if we look at this, see that muon go through there, because what actually happens when a muon passes through this singulate, it produces light. And then you can see in the center there is the silicon photomultiplier. And those silicon photomultipliers, that one chip costs around about £118 the last time I brought one. So that's the dearest component on there. But on the actual board is Arduino, small one, a mini. And then you can see they're all surface mount resistors. So it takes a little bit of skill to solder them on there in a neat fashion. And all the other components that go with it. And that is what we've got at the moment in Canada. We did send one to Australia as well, but we didn't really get any information back from the one that we sent out into Australia. And we've got one here as well. So that's another one that I'm just putting together. I'm waiting for it's got like what's on the back of a TV for the aerial, one of those leads. It's like a barrel connector, so that you know if there is a problem on the board, you can plug it into your oscilloscope and test certain parts of the circuit to see or try and diagnose what's going on. But that's it. And we obviously 3D print, a box for that to fit in, and then we ship it out to people that are trustworthy enough to bring back the data for us. And of course, Kendall in Canada has been with us for quite some time. He's got one of our magnetometers, and he's also got one of our muon detectors, and he sends us that data back nearly every week or every other week. And there was a problem once with it, and we managed to get it turned around within about a week or just over a week. He sent it back to me. The OLED screen had failed on it, and we just soldered a new OLED screen on it, sent it straight back out, and touch wood, it's been working since. Another thing we do to find out, and this is something you guys can do, is with an ordinary radiation detector, because this detects gamma, beta, and alpha particles. So you can detect background radiation. Now, if our magnetosphere is weakening, the background radiation is going to go up as a result, because this does detect cosmic rays, or that in the frequency. So the way to use this, and what I like about this particular model, is it does a background count first. So if I just bring it up to the screen, you can see on the bottom there, just about, it's starting to produce a little graph there, which when it gets to the end here, I think it takes about 12 minutes. And then in red, you'll get the background radiation come up, which is usually around about 16 to 18 microsieverts. In fact, we'll leave that running and we'll just do a background reading. So that's another way we can find out whether the radiation is on the increase as a result of, weakened magnetosphere. Another device that we built was this oxygen sensor. So we can detect atmospheric oxygen with this. If I switch it on, it will give you a reading. It boots up first, and then it'll give you the reading shortly after. It's just coming up now. So we're in the living room. Obviously, I might be breathing a little bit of CO2 or perspiring a bit of respirating CO2 back into the atmosphere. So we've got an atmospheric reading of 20.12% oxygen in this living room, which is perfectly normal. Anything above between 20 and 21, depending on where you are, is a normal reading. Now this has got an Arduino in there. It's also got the Illuminox sensor, and I designed it with a plunge valve on there, so I can press that and purge the oxygen through the sensor that's in there. And I can also put some probes on here on the end there on those two pipes. So if I'm doing an experiment and I want to find out in a contained area the levels of oxygen, I can do that by putting a probe in there and just purging the sensor a few times by pumping this air pump, and it will draw the oxygen through, and I'll get a reading of how much oxygen is there. But the Illuminox sensor is the latest way of detecting, or at least a few years ago when they brought it out, is the latest method of detecting oxygen levels, and it's very accurate. And the same sensor that is in this box is also used in aircraft and military usage as well. But that's just another 3D box that we printed off with our 3D printer. It's got I don't know if you can see it. It's got oxygen sensor there, and then at the bottom, just Mavstar on there. And then we've got another piece of equipment here, which is a CO2 detector. Now, think about this, right? I'm going to switch it on. Now, if I stuck this out the window outside, we're probably going to get a reading of 420 parts, 440 parts per million. But I'm going to switch it on in here and just show you something. So we switch it on, and then it takes 30 seconds to heat the elements up before it takes a reading. And I might as well just hold it there for a bit while it does that. Because I'm predicting about 700 parts per million, maybe 1,000. Okay, there you go. 1,177 parts per million in my living room, and that's because I'm respiring as I breathe CO2 out into the atmosphere. Now, your government around the world want you concerned that this is up, outside is 420 parts per million. They want you concerned about that. Think about that. I'm in a room with 1,246 parts per million. I'm not losing conscious. There's no chance that I will lose conscious. In fact, the alarm would go off on that CO2 detector if I put it on the carriage of a train on the morning run for everyone going to work. It would reach over 5,000 parts per million. And again, you don't pass out on the train, do you? But they want you to be frightened that when you open your front door, you go out into an atmospheric concentration of 440 parts per million. Go figure. And the other thing is that, as you probably already know, that commercial greenhouse growers actually inject CO2 into there because the plants and vegetation and the vegetables thrive on it. If you can bring up the CO2 levels, because CO2 is plant food at the end of the day, if you can bring up the CO2 levels, you're going to get a bumper crop. It's going to, help the growth of that plant. So, human beings, if we're going to be accused of, putting 0.5%, and it's less than that, if we're going to be accused of putting 0.5% into our atmosphere of man-made carbon, and that is the little bit that sends it completely over the edge and creates global warming and sea floor rising, then